Acclaiming you.
Acclaimed producer Mike Jackson has managed to build a successful career in entertainment alongside the likes of his business partner, EGOT winner John Legend. Jackson says he has a responsibility to create, develop, and elevate multicultural content. But what obstacles are standing in his way?
A lot of people that look like us are getting their stories out there, but I think any Black producer or creator will tell you that it's a little tougher with a smaller target to hit to get it out there. Therefore, making everything we want to do a challenge.
I'm Eddie Robinson. Stay tuned as we chat candidly with Emmy and Tony Award-winning film, theater, and TV producer Mike Jackson. He'll share with us what he believes to be the key ingredient for what makes for great storytelling. Oh yeah, I feel you. We hear you. I see you. You're listening to ICU. I'm your host, Eddie Robinson. No, the king of pop has not resurrected. But the gentleman we're about to chat with, I'd like to call the king of cultural media production. He's an Emmy and Tony Award-winning film, theater, and television producer, and he's co-founder and managing partner alongside another award-winning producer, Ty Sticklorius, and an award-winning singer-songwriter, John Legend. The company is called Get Lifted Film Company, an LA-based production company launched in 2012, which has developed projects with a number of major networks. His latest project that he's executive produced include the HBO documentary 1000% Me, Growing Up Mixed.
I've never really had anyone ask me, what are you, or like, what's your skin tone? If someone did ask me, I would probably say I'm mixed.
Very interesting, I might add, as a surrogate father who has a son who's mixed. Loudmouth, a documentary about Reverend Al Sharpton, which premiered at the 2022 Tribeca Film Festival.
Why give me your name? Reverend Alfred Sharpton, chairman of National Youth Movement. We just buried a boy, and the only thing he did wrong was he was born on the wrong side of the track.
And just so many other remarkable productions, feature films, and projects, all that have received a ton of awards. Get Lifted has also formed a joint venture with Picture Start to develop, produce, and finance multiple films in the $10 million range, featuring diverse filmmakers and inclusive cast members. They've also partnered with a book company, as well as hosting some worthwhile discussion series in Austin, at the University of Texas at Austin's Moody College of Communications. Those sessions are called Why Not Me?, where this gentleman here invites his friends and colleagues in the industry to share their stories of breaking into the industry and how they've made a lasting impact for their generation and those to follow.
I appreciate you guys coming here to support Why Not Me in this conversation. Again, Melvin Gregg, Deborah Martin Chase, Yvonne Orji, and Anthony Mackie. Really quickly, the reason we started...
He's a native of Philly with a passion, fierceness, and tenacity unlike no other. And he's elevated multicultural content to audiences worldwide. Crazy mad schedule, but he has graciously set aside time to connect with our show. And he's calling us virtually from Austin, Texas. We're so grateful to welcome the award-winning Mike Jackson. Mike, thank you so much for being a guest on ICU with Eddie Robinson.
Eddie, thank you for having me. And that was such a warm intro. So I appreciate all of it.
It was pretty intense, but you're intense. This is some amazing work that you've done. And there's a portfolio of your work that is astonishing. And you've worked with a plethora of artists, performers, actors, filmmakers. Why producer, Mike? I mean, why go into that arena? Why are you so passionate about being the producer of a particular project, being an executive producer of a particular project? How did you find your passion for producing?
I didn't set out to become a producer. I always thought I would end up being a lawyer.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be an attorney or maybe a sports journalist, like a Stephen A. Smith type or something like that. But, when I was younger, quite frankly, I lived in Boulder, Colorado. Right after school, I was working at a restaurant, and I was a really sociable guy. And these two dudes approached me, and they were like, "We want you to promote our parties." And I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay, sure, I'll promote your parties. And essentially what it means is I got a list. I put my friends' names on it. They show up, they pay a cover, but I also got drink tickets to give my friends a free drink. So I realized, okay, I can put some money in my pocket, my friends can still have a good time, and I can call myself a promoter. But what I really wanted to understand soon afterwards was, well, if I'm making X to promote, what are the guys making that are paying me to promote? And what's their actual hustle as far as like putting on the events? So I started to study what they were doing and understanding how to produce the event as opposed to just promoting it. And then I launched my own event production company soon after that. All of this in Boulder, Colorado, and then eventually San Francisco and New York, Philly. But I learned through the event production, I just fell in love with the word producing and producer and event producer and all that stuff. And I was like, well, I like TV, I like film, I read books, I studied English in college. Why can't I just produce those things as well? I was naive enough to think if I could produce a party, why can't I produce anything? And I just leaned into that, put some money together, got some films financed, and then became a producer. I simplify it.
It does sound simplified, but just curious, were your parents sort of like on board? I mean, it sounded like they might have wanted you to be that attorney, to be someone, in that arena.
They weren't stoked. They were kind of like, you're just kind of partying, dude. Like, what's going on? You're just throwing parties all the time and hanging out, and that doesn't make any sense. But my parents were music heads. They love live music. So then I started incorporating live music into my events. And they were like, well, that's kind of cool. Like, I had them come down once or twice and see what it was all about. So they had a different context of what I was doing. But nonetheless, in their minds, I was just throwing parties. And at some point, there was a ceiling that I was going to hit.
This is ICU. I'm Eddie Robinson, and we're chatting with co-founder and managing partner of the production company called Get Lifted, Emmy and Tony Award-winning film, theater, and TV producer, Mike Jackson. You were born near Philadelphia, correct? And I'm trying to get some insight on how you're introduced to this passion of storytelling, because from what I gather, you eventually got around meeting two other friends that were really sort of interested in, a production company. So how did all of that come about from being in Pennsylvania to now getting your own production company, Get Lifted?
Well, I had another company before then, right? So essentially when I decided to get out of the events business, I really wanted to produce. So I first got a job at a company in Philly called Banyan Productions. They were really known for unscripted television. And at the time, they were doing shows like A Wedding Story, A Baby Story, the show called Trading Spaces.
Hi, I'm Paige Davis, and welcome back to Trading Spaces, the show where two sets of neighbors swap homes for 2 days.
But they were out of Philly, so I found my way into that company. I talked my way into that company. I got a job in casting, quickly became an associate producer, then producer, and just kind of rose through the ranks there. But realized, that there was a bigger world out there for producers, and I wanted to do more than tell baby stories and wedding stories and home renovations. And I convinced a couple friends of mine that were in real estate and doing really well to bankroll a production company for me. So we formed a company together and we called it Tycoon Entertainment. It was based in Philly, but I ended up going out to LA with this banner, Tycoon, behind me and these financiers behind me. I was able to put 3 films together over a 2.5-year period of time. And I call that kind of my grad school, because that afforded me the opportunity to essentially buy my way in, right? Like take this money, make this movie, but also learn about producing from the actual producers that have been championing these projects. And that's kind of how I got into it. And then from there, I went to another company called Station 3, which was a management production company. And it was when the market crashed when I was there, and independent film and film financing was kind of falling to the wayside. And someone said something to me at that point, like, you either have to write a check, be born into it, or be the talent. And I was like, oh man, I'm none of the 3 anymore, because I'm not financing them. I'm not the talent. I wasn't born into it. What am I going to do? And I called my good friend, John Legend, who I was his manager when he was John Stevens. And he was John Legend at this point, but he wasn't John Legend. You know what I mean?
What would I do without your smart mouth? Drawing me in and you kicking me out. You got my head spinning. No.
And I just said, hey man, I wanna launch another company, I want to do it with you. I know who you are. I know the brand. Your brand is comparable to how I think and feel politically and socially and otherwise. And I just want to do it with you. And he said, okay. And this is over the phone. And I was like, cool. And I hung up. I got my yes. And that was around 2011 going into 2012. And then we launched Get Lifted. And we've been grinding ever since.
Jeez. I mean, where is the source of this hustle coming from, Mike Jackson? I mean, there has to be a sense of, when one door closes, you see a window over there and you're going to jump out of it. Where is that source of sort of, determination of I am definitely going to get this no matter what? Where's that coming from?
Well, I'm from Philly. So, Philly's different. We're built different in Philly, and then in particular, I'm from an area called Lower Merion. I went to Lower Merion High School, which, we proudly produced another guy named Kobe Bryant.
Kobe Bryant drains the tray. 2.1.
So, and Kobe has that Mamba mentality, and I don't want to co-opt that. That is his, but I do think there's something in the water where we come from, and we just like the grind. And in memory of Tina Turner, who is someone who always knows how to pick themselves up when they get knocked down. I think that mentality, that kind of fortitude, is just something that's within me and my partners, and a lot of people that I surround myself with. So I think it comes from being a Philly kid with a big ambition and a big drive to win.
You must understand, the touch of your hand makes my pulse react.
And it sounded like John Legend, your partners really had an interest in film, right? In television and that world in and of itself. Did your role in the film and television industry spark his interest, your partner's interest? Or was this something that, you really sort of had to convince them to get involved with to make it all come to fruition?
Yeah, no, everyone loves TV and film, but I don't think that they were looking at it as a business, quite frankly. But I was already in it. I was already producing TV, and I started producing these independent films. So I had the real passion for TV and film. But again, like the person who said to me, you either have to write the check, be born into it, or have the talent. The one thing I did was have talent around me. So I went to John at that point and was just kind of like, I need to leverage your talent and your burgeoning brand and what it means today, but what it's going to mean tomorrow's even is exponentially greater. So let's lean into that. Let's form this partnership and let's see what we can do.
That's fascinating. You mentioned that, and I'm actually going to kind of dive deeper into that relationship. If John Legend and his star power, Mike, would not have entered into the picture, do you think it would have been a challenge for you to create a production company of this magnitude?
Let me start by saying there's a phrase that they use when it's a talent-driven or celebrity-driven company called vanity companies. So most of them fail. And when we launched Get Lifted, the perception was, they'll probably just go away. So I don't think it gives you necessarily an advantage just because you have a star's name sitting next to you. Let me just start by saying that. With that said, of course, as time went along and John Starr grew, having that name next to you is exciting to people. But a lot of times people just want to be in the room with that person or be on a call with that person. It doesn't mean they want to make your stuff. So with that said, I think, whether I was standing next to John or standing next to you, like just two brothers trying to grind, I think it's hard. It doesn't matter who you are. It's just really hard to get a yes in this business. Personally, I believe in who I am as a man. So I believe that I would have been successful in any, kind of configuration of my life and partnerships with anyone or doing it by myself. I feel like winners are going to win.
Can you share with us how you and your team have won? Examine the notion of risk-taking, chance-taking in the stories you want told. I mean, obviously a groundbreaking story or a narrative is what, people ultimately want to share with an audience. But how do you go about assessing those riskier, edgier stories? I mean, I'm hearing a comment in my mind of individuals saying to you, thus and so will never fund this. You'll never get the money to produce this. Mike, are you crazy? Who in their right mind who will want to finance this? In any stories you'd like to share or incidents of, how you or your team would go about sorting through the good, the bad, and the ugly of storytelling.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, we do TV, scripted and unscripted. We do features, theater, both on and off Broadway, and now we publish books. So let's start with making sure we understand we have these different verticals to push content through. And then it becomes about what's the story and what resonates with us, and is it shining a light on the multicultural culture, Black culture? Is it shining a light on a certain individual who maybe needs a light shown on them, or maybe just someone that we want to elevate, or someone that we just admire and respect, like Rev Sharpton. Like, he doesn't need us to tell his story, but we want to be a part of it. But all that to say, everything we do, we feel like is great story and deserve to be seen or heard. Yeah. The issue is we're telling Black stories. So the challenge is there exponentially. We have a movie set up at a studio right now with a white producer who has tremendous success telling his stories. And now he's trying to tell one of our stories with us. Same studio that we're working with, he has done several films with. No problem. Our story, and this is a script that was on the blacklist, by the way. This is a fantastic story set in a fantastic world. It's contemporary and it's fun. Mm-hmm. And every turn, there's a hurdle that the studio is putting in front of us. And finally, yesterday, he was just like, I've never seen this before. And I was like, I see it every day, man. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, it's like just by the nature of the stories we want to tell and the dollars that are out there for us to tell our stories, we're always going to have a little bit of a difficult journey relative to a lot of other folks. That doesn't mean it's impossible. Obviously, we're telling some stories, and a lot of people that look like us are getting their stories out there. But I think any Black producer or creator will tell you that it's a little tougher with a smaller target to hit to get it out there. Therefore, making everything we want to do a challenge.
Coming up, more of our conversation with acclaimed producer Mike Jackson. He reveals to us what he believes to be the perfect ingredient for telling the best narrative. We'll also get his thoughts on why opportunities tend to exist for certain big-name entertainers to direct film projects, but it still remains difficult for actors and actresses of color to break into the directing field. And stay tuned as he shares with us an incident of what went down during a pitch meeting of a brand new show he was involved with. Why did studio executives and programmers decide to say no to the TV project? The reason just might surprise you. I'm Eddie Robinson. I See You returns in just a moment. We'll be right back.
If you're enjoying this program, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast, I See You with Eddie Robinson. You can hear all the past episodes and be notified when new episodes are released. Also, please take a minute to give us a review or comment. We love getting feedback from our listeners.
You're listening to I See You. I'm Eddie Robinson. We're chatting with Emmy and Tony Award-winning film, theater, and TV producer Mike Jackson. He's also co-founder and managing partner of Get Lifted Film Company. It's a production company which has developed projects with major networks including ABC, NBC, Fox, HBO, Showtime, Netflix, just to name a few. He's been working to bring more multicultural content to global audiences, and he's building an incredible portfolio of projects alongside a collaborative partner of his, EGOT-winning musician and philanthropist John Legend. EGOT winner is an acronym that stands for Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Awards. John Legend is certainly an achiever who's proven himself in television, music recordings, film, and Broadway theater. Get Lifted executive produced the Oscar-winning musical La La Land. We're so excited to chat with Philly native Mike Jackson and really grateful for him to spend some time with I See You as he calls us virtually from his new hometown of Austin, Texas. There was talk about seeing more and more individuals that look like me or you, Mike, involved in the action at major studios in Hollywood. Film director Stephen Capel Jr. had an interview with us recently, and, he made the point of seeing a scarcity of Black executives in Hollywood storytelling.
Then you see really good execs on projects and creative execs on projects who know story, whether Black, white, or brown. They know story, right? They know who's a talent, in terms of actors. They know who's a great director or filmmaker, and it's their job to put it together. They're going through their own battle inside, right? And they're I'm pretty sure they're having to play a game to a certain point, playing politics, aka House of Cards, to try to figure out a way to maneuver to get me up there, or to get Ryan up there, or to get anyone.
And these individuals play, I would imagine, an important role, right, in leading and championing efforts of making sure that these stories are being told accurately. The depictions are being accurately and truthfully told. And then there's this thought process of owning one's own distribution channel of networks as a way of seeing your product on multiple platforms. Maybe there's some racial factors that play there. What do you see are the real roadblocks in the industry, and what do you think needs to be done to address this?
I really like Stephen Capel Jr. a lot.
Amazing.
Got a great voice. He's a good dude. And whenever I get to chat with him, we have great conversation. Yeah, I do think we need to have more of us in leadership roles at the networks and the studios. Look, we're in a deal at Universal for television, and the head of our studio is a woman named Perlina, and I always say her last name wrong, Ibakwe, but she's someone who's great. Or you have Tara Duncan at Onyx, and Ashley Holland at Onyx, and Nigel Kirkendall at Netflix, or Nicole Brown at TriStar. I mean, we're trying to do the thing and get there. And by the way, everyone I mentioned was a Black woman. I don't know if you picked up on that. Rashida Jones and MSNBC. So,
that's awesome.
We are making strides forward as far as people that look like us in leadership roles that help make the decision. The reality is they only can make so many things. You can't, even if you have people in the room, they can't just make all things Black, right? It's just,
right.
It's a challenge. So, I think to Stephen's point and the larger point, yeah, we need to have our people in place. We need to have more dollars committed to our stories. We need to kind of, in my opinion, look, I'm all about track record and people earning the right to have opportunities to make movies and TV shows. But I also think we need to bet on Black a little bit more in the earlier stages of folks' careers. I see actors and actresses, white actors and actresses with no real directing experience, get movies greenlit for them to direct just because of their name or their profile. But yet we don't give that same opportunity to people who have experience that look like us. Or if we do, we really try to make it almost impossible. And if you kind of if you can stay the course, maybe you can get that golden apple. But yeah, man, I think it's about people of color in leadership, the studios and the networks committing dollars to us, because dollars and cents are what we're all here to do. And, giving people the opportunity to kind of tell our stories. It's an uphill battle for us always. And Capel's right. We need more.
In this day and age, conversations about race, about diversity are starting to receive some increased scrutiny. DEI hires are being axed. Diversity measures are being cut.
But a new report from the management consulting company Development Dimensions International shows more and more companies are cutting their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. To learn more,
how do you see any of this playing out over time, Mike? Will this bleed over into the production of multicultural content and material like the work you and Get Lifted are involved with? What's going on here in your mind?
think we've always been marginalized. I don't think this is anything new. I mean, this is just what it is. This is just being Black in Hollywood, man. You got to just understand that the playing fields aren't even. They're not level. It's like the old, like my daddy told me every day of my life, you got to be 110% better than the person standing next to you, because it's an uneven playing field. So I think, again, it's just about not being surprised and not having these expectations that it's going to, we're going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be like this Black utopia in Hollywood, and storytelling is just going to be knocking at our door. We have to just keep working harder and understand. And that doesn't mean stay complacent. We always have to fight for change and keep pushing for change and doing all the things that make it better for the folks that follow us. But at the same time, don't be surprised by it. I mean, if you just look at the climate of our country, if you just look at Florida and DeSantis, I mean, and banning Amanda Gorman's poem. Like,
then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright.
That poem, The Hill We Climb, is now banned. Tonight, Amanda Gorman has responded to the ban saying, quote, "I am gutted. I wrote The Hill We Climb so that all young people could see themselves in a historical moment. Robbing children of the chance to find their voices in literature is a violation of their right to free thought and free speech."
I mean, they're always going to try to censor our content or block it from being seen or heard. So again, it's just do what we do, fight how we fight, you know, and be loud and be disruptive and do whatever you can to be seen and be heard.
You know, as a man of color who leads an award-winning production company, do you find that, I mean, is there ever a misconception from others that you only produce Black content? You know, I mean, do you find yourself being confronted with that moniker, or does it even bother you per se?
Sure, yeah, and you know, the truth is we do pretty much produce brown and Black content, but we're not limited to that. You know, we were executive producers on La La Land, and that's arguably one of the whitest movies ever, even with jazz in it.
I don't know what your name is, but I like it. I've been thinking about some things I want to try. I don't know what you came to do, but I want to do it with you. And I just know I feel so good tonight.
We have a responsibility to tell stories about people that look like us, right? Like, if not us, then who? So if people want to say that you guys just do Black like, yeah, what do you do? White No one tells white folks you only do white You know what I mean? Like, so, yeah, that's what we do. Thank you.
Yes.
That's why we're here. To amplify our experiences and our stories and our people and give ourselves a platform, because y'all haven't been doing it. And when you do give it to us, we're drug dealers and this, that, and the other thing. And my job and our job is to create a platform that highlights the Black experience in totality. You know, show all the highs of what it looks like to be a person of color in this country and walk in our shoes. And yeah, sure, we'll show some of the trauma. We'll show a lot of the trauma because that's a part of the Black experience. But like, don't let it define us, rather. You know, we're much more than they've allowed us to be. So yeah, when we get the platform and we get to run with it, we're going to tell our stories as much as we can. It's our responsibility. And anyone who asks that question, like, why not?
Mike, if we can pick your brain for a minute, the key ingredient of what makes an incredible story, you know, the key ingredient that will inspire you. What inspires you? If someone has a project, someone has a pitch, something has to cross your desk, cross your eye, and say, wow, where's a phone here? We've got to get this going. What inspires you? What's the key ingredient that you need for an incredible story to be told?
Yeah, I think, you know, we don't do just one thing, you know, but I think it's a great question because at its core, it's like, what's the trigger? And, you know, I think for me and for us, like, it's not just one thing. It's if you want to make it one thing, then it's called a feeling. But it's not like a specific thing. We're looking for this versus this versus this. You know, it's just like you review material, or you see something on the news, or you read a script, or read a book, or a newspaper article, or you just have a thought, right? But it has to be something that's followed with this feeling of like, oh shit, like I can see that on screen or on stage, and it's hard to explain what that feeling is, but it's like this innate understanding of like yourself and your body and like that like thing you can't shake, and then you like, you know, a day later, 2 days later, it's still living in your head, and it's just this thing that you can't escape. I think that's kind of the tell for me, is when you can't run from it, then you gotta live with it, and then you gotta try to push it out there for other people to have that same experience.
And it's layered, right? I mean, Capel makes, you know, these incredible films and introduces these remarkable characters. Perhaps they're villains, but they're layered, right? They've gone through some really crazy things, and it makes you even want to learn more about that particular person.
We're complex people, right? Like, if you're going to put something on screen and it's just a one-dimensional person, then that's kind of boring and we've probably seen it, but to do that deeper dissection into humanity and psychology of the character, then it needs to be layered because, like I said, we're complex folks,
Especially people of color.
We got a lot of baggage.
We
got a lot of baggage that we have to carry living in this country. So, let's go deeper. Let's not do it.
It's ICU. I'm Eddie Robinson. As we continue our conversation with Mike Jackson, we're learning more about his life and award-winning career in theater, film, and television. He's co-founder and managing partner of Get Lifted Film Company. It's a production company which has developed projects with just about every major network that's in the industry right now. Sometimes, in life, an incident or a moment happens, Mike, that we just can't seem to get it out of our consciousness. It's a moment that you experience and it was like something is happening here. We're wondering if you can describe for us that moment, that incident, and how it went down, some racist or uncomfortable, intense moment throughout the course of your career. And it sticks with you. It resonates with you, and you just can't seem to get it out of your consciousness.
I mean, I feel like there's little hints of, I hate to say racism, but prejudice, let's say, towards people of color. I think there's hints of that almost daily, right? I really do. Like from my side of the table, when you're always out there pushing content, I think it happens very often. Just like I was saying earlier with the white producer who was like, wow, this has never happened to me before. Like little things like that. But, a specific incident, like I'll tell you, we developed something recently for television, a half-hour show. Let's just say it was like our version of like an Everybody Hates Chris, but for John. And we had Tim Story on board to direct it. We partnered with a white producer, a guy named Adam Goldberg, who created a show called The Goldbergs, which is one of the biggest family comedies ever. So we had this dream team to do this great half-hour origin story about this pretty famous guy named John Legend. And we had music and family and church and all these wonderful elements. And all we were told was how amazing it was through the whole development process. And then we found out that they already had their Black half-hour show. So they couldn't do ours. Now, they didn't say, we already have our Black half-hour show, so we can't do yours. But they said, hey, we have, and I don't want to say the other show, hey guys, we have show X, and so therefore we can't do yours. They're too similar. Right. Completely different shows. Completely different. The only similarity was, Black folk. Let me correct my tongue. Black folks. So that to me was loud, banging example of the subtleties of, that to me is racist. To say that there's not a bandwidth on a major network for two Black half-hour shows, period. And obviously there have been networks that have had more than one Black half-hour show. I mean, just look at the Cosby block with Different World and all those shows. But I challenge you to really actually find that on the majors, multiple Black half hours.
Interesting.
And again, Kenya had it on ABC, but they were all his shows. You know what I mean? It was all like, they're like offshoots or, and at one point they had like an Asian half-hour show with Kenya's show, but like, it's hard to find it, So
wow.
That to me felt like a real big punch in the face.
Your team has already produced a number of projects, but can you think of one that received some really heavy backlash, some not so positive feedback?
Honestly, I feel we've had really good fortune when it comes to our content as far as the public perception and being well received. We've been really, really lucky in that regard. Funny enough, the most criticism I remember us receiving was for La La Land. And I think because they thought, John being on camera, us like really being involved in, the marketing and promotions of the film. And then the fact that it just had such a big audience.
Sure.
And it was a love letter to jazz. I felt we got a lot of pushback from the Black community in that regard, which is normally the community that holds us up. So ultimately, I think ultimately.
Why is that? What's going on there?
I mean, we as a people, we got expectations, man. Like, I wasn't mad at us. I was not mad at us. I was like, I hear us. I hear us. And I hear the criticisms. And, they're valid and warranted. But, at the same time, I think if you want to affect change, you got to have some different kind of bedfellows. You know what I mean? And you got to mix it up a little bit and do what you have to do. Our whole goal was to have them let us in the room. You know what I mean? So now we're in the room. So now it's like, who are we locking hands with? And sometimes they're not going to look like us. Yeah. And sometimes we're going to be embedded in their stories that aren't necessarily for us. But that doesn't mean it's going to stop the progression of the journey forward. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like La La Land, again, was a movie that really pushed us forward as a company, although it wasn't our story, and sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah, true. I mean, the journey is getting into the room.
Real talk. Real talk.
Much less once you're in the room.
And then even once
the journey is getting
even once you're inside the house or whatever you want to call it, and there's multiple rooms, you still got to find keys to certain rooms. Sometimes they sometimes they want to let you into some of the rooms in the house. You know what I mean? It's about figuring it out,
What's been the production that you're most proud of?
Oh, wow.
Mike Jackson, you see it all the time, and you're like, oh, the one project that really shines in your eyes and makes you proud that you were involved in making this beautiful gem come to life.
Golly. I'm proud of a lot of the things that we've done. There was a play that we did off Broadway called Turn Me Loose. And it was about the life of Dick Gregory.
People always come up and ask me, Mr. Gregory, why are you the way you are? You're so outspoken and sure of yourself. Was you always that way, Mr. Gregory?
And Joe Morton played Mr. Gregory. And I just remember opening night, we got to perform the play in front of Mr. Gregory. And anyone who knows Mr. Gregory knows he's a conspiracy theorist. He ain't giving it up. You know what I mean? If anything, he's going to break it down. You know what I mean? And I remember after the play, Mr. Gregory, we shouted him out and we applauded him, but he went to the stage and then spoke for quite a while about his admiration and respect for the work that we collectively had done to tell his story. And I felt in that moment a level of pride and excitement that I hadn't really felt before professionally. And sure, it was all about the hard work and all the creativity and the creative minds that came together to put this production on. But to have the man himself, that critic, Dick Gregory, say, good job, that to me was like, yeah, man, this was, we did that. That was great. And it was really about Joe Morton's performance, if I'm going to really break it down, but I was still on the team, so I took that win. And it felt great.
Coming up, we wrap up our chat with acclaimed film, TV, and theater producer Mike Jackson. We dive in deep into his own talk platform that he's affiliated with, hosted by the University of Texas at Austin's Moody College of Communications. It's the top-ranked, largest, and most comprehensive college of communication in the country. And share with us your thoughts and feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Follow us on Instagram and send us an email. talk@iseeushow.org. I'm Eddie Robinson. Our final segment with Mike Jackson on ICU comes your way right after these messages.
If you're enjoying this program, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast, ICU with Eddie Robinson. You can hear all the past episodes and be notified when new episodes are released. Also, please take a minute to give us a review or comment. We love getting feedback from our listeners.
You're listening to ICU. I'm your host, Eddie Robinson. We've been chatting with Mike Jackson. No, he's not the king of pop, but he's certainly the king of multicultural programming and award-winning content. Mike is co-founder and managing partner of a production company called Get Lifted. You've probably seen many of their projects before. The Oscar-winning musical La La Land, the HBO documentary 40 Years a Prisoner, and what about the WGN series Underground, created by Misha Green? Well, Jackson and Get Lifted have partnered with book imprints, as well as created joint film ventures that are focused on developing and producing, along with financing, multiple film projects in the $10 million range that feature more diverse filmmakers and inclusive casts for audiences worldwide. And if all that doesn't impress you, Mike continues to stay busy and give back to those who are looking to break into the field of media. Jackson leads a discussion series for people of color and underrepresented communities in media called Why Not Me?, a platform hosted at the Moody College of Communication at the University of Texas. We'll find out more details about this later in the segment as we wrap up our conversation with Mike Jackson, who's chatting with us virtually from Austin, Texas. In the spirit of historical visuals, if you will, as far as my tastes go, I've always admired seeing visuals of individuals of our past, for better or worse, reimagined and given some form of dramatized film or stage production or series that pushes those historical figures into the limelight. For instance, the Prime Video conspiracy drama series known as Hunters.
Agent Morris, I think there's Nazis living in America, and someone out there is taking them out.
This series takes on the evil character known as Adolf Hitler and reimagines the circumstances around his existence, all while a group of Nazi hunters, band together, head to South America to track him down. I love this notion of, really sort of transitioning and transforming historical figures into the complexity called life and seeing them reimagined. Lovecraft Country at HBO.
It's about heroes who get to go on adventures, defeat the monsters, and save the day. Little boy from the south side of Chicago, the only tourist to get to do that.
They did this on some level with that, but in your mind, based on the experiences of what you've already produced, what you've already worked on, what kinds of material? I'm thinking along the lines of you helping us understand the future tastes. What are some future concepts? What are some other concepts that you think really sort of, as a producer, as someone who is a content creator?
Yeah. I'd love to see something with Basquiat doing something contemporary. I don't know if he's going to be like a hunter killing Nazis, but I'd love to see him navigate some sort of tumultuous contemporary anti-art thing. I don't know what that, I just love Basquiat. That's probably not the right guy to answer this question with. Dumas, not the guy who wrote Three Musketeers, but his daddy, who was like from the French, a French warrior. I would love to maybe see him come back, like the Black Count. See him come back in the contemporary world and see how he could handle some stuff. I think, again, everyone talks about Alexander Dumas, but he wrote everything he wrote about was about his daddy. So I like to his daddy come back. And we tried to do that movie, The Black Count, based off, it was a book called The Black Count, and we had the rights for it for a while. But again, I would love to see that dude. I'd love to see that dude right now and send him to Florida.
I know, right?
Go talk to DeSantis and the
Exactly.
fellas. And see what's good. You know what I mean? Or some of these parents on the PTA who a speech is good enough for the fucking country and Obama and the White House, but it's not good enough for their fucking daughter. Give me a break. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Yeah, so I like to see some cat like that come back on his horse and just ride around, checking folks.
Intense.
Something like that maybe would be pretty cool. There was another thing we've been spitting, we had an idea of doing, remember the show The Greatest American Hero? And it was like, believe it or not, I'm walking on air.
From 80s, I'm walking on air. I never thought I would,
So there was a guy named William Cott, or Cat, who played him. But the idea of an unsuspecting hero, I would love to see the black version of that, which we actually tried to develop. But put the unassuming person of color in the position of hero give them some sort of power and see how they can affect change in this world and see what they can do with that kind of gift. I just think anything that shows us empowered would be pretty cool. Any character that came back around would be pretty cool. I think if you brought any black character from back in the day, in the present day though, they'd be like, what the is going on here? Like, what happened to progress, y'all? Like, what are we doing? Like, who is...
Yeah, all right.
Make America great again. Yeah. What are we talking about? So I think it would be interesting to see someone from the past in contemporary America.
I'm Eddie Robinson, and this is ICU. We're here with acclaimed producer, co-founder, and managing partner of Get Lifted Film Company, Mike Jackson. Are there any folks that you'd like to collaborate with and work with through your company that you haven't connected with just yet?
Oh, there's so many people I would love to work with. I feel like I'm just going to kind of like keep creating opportunities and keep reaching out to people. And I want to work with Eddie Robinson. I want to do some work with Eddie Robinson.
All right, let's make it happen.
You know what I'm saying? Like, let's figure it out.
I find your discussions and talk session series, Why Not Me?
Yeah.
Pretty fascinating, and they're happening over at the University of Texas at Austin's Moody College of Communications. And it's an opportunity, as I mentioned at the top, where you're inviting friends and colleagues in the industry to share their stories of breaking into the industry. And it's a platform for people of color and underrepresented communities to come together and share tools and templates of what they've had to endure to get to where many students want to be. And I'm wondering and curious, throughout the course of these talks and these discussions that you've had, what's been the overall takeaway, the key nuggets of what many of the students have walked away from in saying about these series? What's been the key nuggets, especially for students in the communications field?
Yeah, I think, well, look, how it started was when I got here, I was invited to do some panels throughout town. And, I would go do them. And then afterwards, every brown and black person, student or otherwise, would stop me afterwards. And I would end up in these conversations. So for me, it was really like, I went to the dean of Moody, I went to Jay, and I was basically like, I just need support so that we could have these conversations, right? And he graciously said yes. And I call it Why Not Me? Because it needs to be relatable, right? Like, if you see someone that's uber successful talking to you, that maybe isn't relatable because they're in such a different place.
So you're in Juilliard, and now you're the big.
We got together. We would get together every night because we were poor, and we would go to this place called Gray's Papaya. All the black kids.
Great hot dogs.
Yeah, you get 2 hot dogs and a papaya juice for $2. It was called a recession special.
But if you can bring it back to like, this is to answer your question, I always start with origin story. Where are you from? What was your family like? Where'd you go to elementary school? Like, what were the seeds of your life that were watered and allowed you to evolve and grow into the person you are and lean into your artistry? So for me, I think the takeaway with that notion, it's related, the big nuggets being relatability. And I think a lot of the kids that I've talked to, and they're not even kids, they're grown up, always have come out of the conversation feeling like they can see themselves in this individual because that individual started similarly to them, or their origin story was flawed, like they feel their origin story is flawed, or there's like that point A to point B that they can kind of draw. And, I had guys like Jay Ellis, from Maverick and Insecure, talking about working at a clothing store in the Beverly Center. You know what I mean? And Robin Thede, was a guest who was just like, this shit ain't easy. Like, if you want to be a writer and tell our stories, like, talk about all the like mundane things that they had to do to evolve to the place of that. Or even Stephen A. Smith, who was a guest,
Because if you notice something about me, I will come to my own defense all day, every day. You come at me, I'll come right back at you at my discretion.
Talking about driving his car at night, confused about his future, and like figuring out like, I don't know what's next. How do you get from point A to point B? I know how to work hard, you know what I mean? But it takes more than that. So again, I think it's about the relatability, everyone's story, if you break it down to like how you began. And I think that's always and will continue to be the big takeaway for the Why Not Me series, is that, which is our goal, again, is to make it relatable.
Of all the work and of all the accomplishments that you've done, Mike, and the inspiration that you've brought to everyone who've seen your work. What lessons have you learned about yourself thus far?
What lessons have I learned about myself on my journey? That's a great question. I think what I've learned about myself is it's good to dream. I learned that dreams can be like a beautiful a canvas, so to speak, like this thing that you can kind of see in your head and visualize and even live in it, although it's not necessarily your truth yet, but you can live in this dream of like what and how you want things to be. But what I've learned about myself through dreaming is there is a path forward, and it's called hard work and ambition and being able to execute. So I guess what I've learned about myself is that I'm a big dreamer with a little bit of work ethic and a lot of stamina and a lot of hustle.
And to me, the big word there is stamina.
Yeah.
Because it takes endurance to be in this industry that you're in. It takes a lot of willpower, staying power.
Yeah, man.
And you've done it because you're an Emmy and Tony Award-winning film, theater, and television producer, Mike Jackson. Thank you. Thank you for being a guest on ICU.
Thanks for having me, Eddie. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. I appreciate it.
Our team includes technical director Todd Holzlander, producer Laura Walker, editors Mark DeClaudio and John Mitchell Good. ICU is a production of Houston Public Media. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen and download your favorite shows. I'm your host and executive producer, Eddie Robinson. And I feel you. We hear you. I see you. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.